NFL Week 3 coming to a conclusion here soon, and we got to talk about the latest trade rumors around the Miami Dolphins, specifically from Dan Graziano over at ESPN. He shared a lot more insight and maybe a prediction on both Tyreek Hill and Jaelan Phillips. With the Dolphins being 0-3 and likely a losing team at the trade deadline, they probably are going to sell, and these two might be some of the top players traded on the November 4th trade deadline. But even though the Dolphins are 0-3, it's always nice to see our division rivals lose. The Jets lost today in heartbreaking fashion. The Patriots lost today in heartbreaking fashion. If you're happy those two fan bases are sitting in misery like we are, hit that thumbs up icon. Let's start with talking about Tyreek Hill, who has clearly headlined most of our trade rumors discussion here. But Graziano over at ESPN labeled the top 5 trade candidates, and Tyreek Hill was numero uno. This kind of also works hand in hand with Bleacher Report's trade big board, having Tyreek Hill number 1 as well. It feels like, to quote Mitchell Rentz here at Chat Sports, where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, Dan Graziano said that everything he's told backs up the idea that Tyreek Hill has been doing the work the Dolphins have needed him to do to repair the relationships he ruined at the end of last season with the trade request. But he's still a 31-year-old receiver with no guaranteed money on his deal beyond this season, and with a base salary of $10 million, that wouldn't be tough for another team to take on. There is a complicating factor of Tyreek Hill facing league discipline in a form of a suspension because of his claims from his ex-wife, who allegedly said that Tyreek Hill abused her, pushed her, spit on her, turned her leg. And there is no criminal charges to this point, but the NFL does not need criminal charges to ultimately suspend Tyreek Hill. So that is something that we will certainly monitor, as we have been monitoring over the past couple of weeks. But when I think about Tyreek Hill, I think he is as good as gone. I have said it time over time over time, and I don't want to beat a dead horse with the same line of thinking, but if you are just watching our content for the first time, I do want to make it abundantly clear, he has a $52.8 million cap hit next season. The Dolphins saved $36 million by cutting him. They are not going to have Tyreek Hill on the roster next season. So if you are a losing football team, you do not contend for a playoff spot or even have a chance to make the playoffs, which as it looks through 3 weeks, Miami probably does not have, well then you should absolutely trade Tyreek Hill now, get draft capital in return, whether it is a 3rd round pick, a conditional 3rd, a 3rd and a 5th, regardless, whatever it is, and you still create that potential space next offseason by trading him, but you also get a draft pick now. So if you are a losing team by November 4th, which is the trade deadline, Tyreek Hill should be as good as gone. But what say you? Pin comment on today's show. Will Tyreek Hill be traded? Predict it for me in the comments. I am certainly typing my Y's for yes, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And it's not because Tyreek Hill has been bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think through 3 games, he's been very, very solid. And I'll be honest, he could have way bigger numbers than what he has currently. When I've watched the tape and watched the film of the Dolphins offense through 3 weeks, specifically looking at the Colts game in week 1, and then seeing some of the missed opportunities in week 3 as well against the Buffalo Bills, we could see Tyreek Hill, quite honestly, having over 300 yards after 3 weeks and 3 touchdowns. The pick that Tua threw in the first quarter of week 1 where he overthrew Tyreek, if Tua hits Tyreek on the inbreaker, in stride, there is no one that's going to stop Tyreek from turning the corner, beating the safety to the pylon, and scoring a 35, 40-yard touchdown. Instead, obviously, Tua overthrew him, and it was intercepted. And that's really been the story of the season. You saw Tua miss Tyreek on an 18-yard inbreaker against the Patriots in week 2. We watched him miss Tyreek Hill on an 18-out breaker and a comeback route in week 3 against Buffalo. So when I watch the tape, when I watch the film, there really doesn't show any decline for Tyreek Hill to this point. It's more or less on the offensive line not giving Tua enough time, or Tua just flat out missing Tyreek. So I think you would still be able to get a relatively solid return for Hill, whether it is a similar package to Devontae Adams from a year ago, where he was traded from Vegas to New York for a conditional 3rd round pick, or Miami maybe just gets a solid 3rd round pick plus a day 3 selection in the 5th or 6th round. More trade rumors to come here in a second, but this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, and every day you and I make decisions. Well, with the right ones on PrizePicks, you can get paid where it's good to be right. It's simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect, double your money even if one of your picks does not hit, which is what I should have done for my Week 3 entry. I took more than Ramondre Stevenson rushing yards. He was a terrorist and fumbled twice, which means he got pulled and didn't get to the number I needed. But I was right on Ash and Genty, and I took advantage of the max discount, which you can still do if you're watching this before Sunday Night Football, more than half a yard for Patrick Mahomes. If I did a flex play, I would have won. I did not. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. We've talked a lot about Julian Hill's on the mind. Why? I do not know. I do not ever want to think about him. But we talk a lot about Tyreek Hill being traded. We've briefly mentioned Jaelan Phillips, but I think we should talk about this more because he was on the Bleacher Report trade big board list, and he makes Dan Graziano's top 5 as the 4th player most likely to be traded. Graziano said that Phillips, the former first-round pick playing on his 5th-year option with no deal beyond this year, could be a very interesting target for pass rush-needy teams. Well, let's be honest here. Every NFL team could use more pass rushers. He has had trouble staying healthy, but he's healthy now, and the prorated portion of his $13.25 million salary wouldn't be too bad in a league which everyone is also looking for edge rushers. So, to the same degree that I use Tyreek Hill, if the Dolphins are not going to contend, which they are not, they should look to trade off every veteran that they do not have long-term deals with or project as players that ultimately won't be with us long-term. I love Jaelan Phillips, but the truth of the matter is this. He has been injured in 2 of the last 5 seasons, torn Achilles, torn ACL. He has not been overly productive through 3 weeks of the season, and if Miami doesn't have any inclination to extend him, then yes, you should look to trade him and get a maybe 3rd-round pick. Likely, though, probably a 4th or maybe a 5th. Maybe you do like one of those pick swaps where you trade a 6th-round pick and Phillips to get a 3rd-round pick. Something in that vein. But Phillips is a player that should generate interest because he's an expiring contract, and I think Miami could easily move off of him. Well, if the Dolphins do make any moves, make sure you are subscribed because we will have you covered. We got news, rumors every single day. Still dropping 2 videos for y'all, even on NFL Sunday. Subscribe. It is free. It would be a harder conversation to have if Phillips was dominating through 3 weeks. But if we're going to be honest, he's been pretty non-existent. He really hasn't gotten to the quarterback. I've been disappointed in Chop Robinson, but he has a sack. Bradley Chubb has 3 sacks. Jaelan Phillips really hasn't brought anything to the table. And I get it. He's been close. He's been generating some pressures 9 through 3 weeks, but he really hasn't been overly productive and eye-popping to where I'm looking at this and like, okay, let's keep Jaelan Phillips around. Let's extend him after the season. He doesn't look like the same guy that he looked like in his first couple of years in the league before the ACL and Achilles injuries ultimately took place. So it's disappointing for sure. A homegrown talent went to the University of Miami, drafted in the 1st round, but I just don't see him being an elite pass rusher of the future. And I don't know what he would be worth for a contract extension. I have an idea with the trade being a early day 3 pick, but if he's gonna ask for $15 million a year in free agency, then hell no, I'm not probably giving him that. Just can't do it. So it might be like a situation where it's a thing where you just say, not my monkey, not my circus. You trade Jaelan Phillips, pick up a 4th-round pick, and then let him do whatever he wants to do in free agency with whatever team ultimately trades for him. I think teams would call on Phillips. I think teams will call on Bradley Chubb. And if the Dolphins continue to look as bad as they've looked, they're likely going to sell, and I would put Phillips and Chubb both up there in terms with Tyreek Hill of potential trade targets. Tyreek is still numero uno without a question, but there is a chance that Phillips and Chubb both get dealt as well. All right, that'll do it for today's show. If any trade happens for the Miami Dolphins, we'll obviously have a video, but I'll have the news on my Twitter first. And that's how it is with all Dolphins news. You want to be covered with everything up to date, 365, 24/7. Follow me at Nick_Roloff and make sure you're subscribed.